Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're stepping straight into the shadows. We're going to explore a grim, dark fable drawn directly from the Mercurial Legendarium. It's this incredibly profound story about escaping mechanized captivity and making the impossible journey from a state of total negation to absolute internal sovereignty. Think of it as a deeply Nietzschean journey of the soul. The old words, the rigid definitions of the world around us, they're all going to crumble. And the only way out? Well, the only way out is down, into your own psychological depths. The very language of our reality is about to be completely rewritten. So let's dive into this mythic descent. Our story kicks off in a place called the Iron City. Imagine being trapped inside an endless, suffocating expanse of grinding gears and industrial cynicism. It's a clockwork trap. This is a place where absolute conformity is the rule, and individuality, it gets systematically crushed under the heavy weight of bureaucratic logic. The Iron City represents an era of pure, mechanized captivity. It's a world where the human soul is caught in an invisible, societal prison, forced day in and day out to conform to this cold, clinical grid of logic. And it sets up this brutal, tragic contrast. In the Iron City, you aren't an individual. You're reduced to a mere biological machine. Your internal power, your literal divine spark, is siphoned off just to power external ghosts, things like the state, massive religious institutions, sprawling bureaucracy. You're essentially just a battery for the machine. But the entire goal of our fable is the monumental transformation across that chasm, evolving from a drained biological machine into a sovereign, self-mastered creator who actually houses their divine spark within. So how do you actually break out of a machine like that? Well, it starts with terror. It starts with what's known as the Great Epistemological Collapse. This is a wildly terrifying, agitated state that hits you the second the clinical grid of logic finally fails. The safety net of the herd is violently yanked away by forces known as the Gray Spirit and the Great Star of Negation. Imagine if the dictionary you used to define your entire life was suddenly set on fire. All those structures and definitions you trusted to give your life purpose, they're revealed to be completely, utterly hollow. The exact mechanism of that terror is called epistemological dissolution. It's the total, undeniable collapse of all external meaning and stored truths. In our lore, the Baron's philosophy acts like this grinding, corrosive acid. It eats right through external certainty, turning the monumental, supposedly unshakable truths of society into absolute dust. It leaves you with literally nothing to hold on to, forcing your soul out into a terrifying white void of complete negation. When the acid of the Baron's philosophy finally finishes its grim work, all that's left is this eerie, silent emptiness. The texts call it the blank vellum of existence. Just sit with that image for a second, really picture it. In ancient philology, vellum was a specially prepared animal skin, right? It was used exclusively to write the most sacred texts. Here, the universe's sacred text has been wiped completely clean. There are no rules anymore, no inherited meanings, absolutely no external saviors coming to rescue you. It's just a blank page waiting in the dead silence. To survive this void, your soul is forced to execute what is known as the interior turn. It happens in 3 grueling steps. First, all society's meaning is violently stripped away. Second, having lost the external world entirely, you have to descend into your own psychological depths. And third, you must integrate your internal shadows. Think of this process like having to swallow a deadly poison just so your body can synthesize the antidote. It's a harsh, dark journey. But you have to venture into the most terrifying parts of your own psyche and claim them, because right now, they are literally the only foundation you have left. But this is exactly where the magic happens. Enter yellow mercury. This is the glowing alchemical antidote to the Baron's grinding acid. Yellow mercury symbolizes a fluid intellect. Let's say a massive earthquake hits a rigid stone fortress. That's the epistemological dissolution. If your mind is rigid like that stone, it's just going to shatter and crumble. But if your intellect is like a fluid golden metal, like yellow mercury, it simply bends, it adapts, it flows safely through the collapsing structures of the Iron City. It is the vital catalyst that actually allows you to survive the void. Now, the absolutely crucial point here is how you deploy this fluid intellect. You use it to take what the fable calls the sideways step. Instead of standing there, rigid, waiting to be completely crushed by the total negation and the cold anti-light of the Baron's destruction, your fluid intellect allows your soul to just step out of the path of annihilation. It's a deliberate movement toward an unnamed beginning. It's that precise moment you decide to pick up the pen and become the author of a brand new text. Let's picture this exact symbolic pivot, almost like a really vivid, dark panel in a graphic novel. The act is called mixing yellow. In the lore, this act is observed simply as a solitary amber light glowing in a dark studio window in Weimar. Weimar is a perfectly chosen historical setting here, known as a cultural crucible for brilliant, defiant intellects. Amidst the sprawling, suffocating machinery of the Iron City and the crushing white void of the Baron's negation, this single, warm amber light just flicks on. That window, glowing in the dark, that is the exact moment the sideways step is taken.
You might be wondering, why does one tiny amber light matter so much against all that darkness? Because it is indifferent to the Baron's precision. The Baron's philosophy is built on cold, clinical logic that desperately seeks to reduce everything to nothing. But that warm amber glow of yellow mercury, it doesn't even try to fight the Baron's logic on its own terms. It simply exists outside of it. It defies the cold purely with warmth. It establishes an entirely new, deeply internal foundation that external logic literally cannot touch.
When we map out this heroic, mythic evolution of the soul, a remarkably clear path emerges. We start back in step 1, industrial captivity, trapped as biological machines. Then we get hit by step 2, the terrifying epistemological dissolution brought on by the gray spirit's negation. Step 3, armed with the fluid intellect of yellow mercury, we take the sideways step, which ultimately leads us to the final breakthrough, step 4, becoming the soul architect. And that little amber light we saw flickering in the Weimar window, it grows into the burning lamp. This lamp is the ultimate symbol of what the ancient texts call the reclamation. It is a mystical, fierce fire that the individual has successfully carried back from their terrifying descent into the psychological depths. The integration of those dark shadows is finally complete. The inner darkness has been completely alchemized into light. The source material describes this burning lamp beautifully. They call it a stubborn vestige of the sovereign soul. I absolutely love this framing because it really hits the nail on the head regarding the sheer resilience of the human spirit. Despite the suffocating conformity of the herd, and despite the corrosive acid of total negation, the soul cannot be entirely extinguished by the Iron City. It's stubborn. It simply refuses to go out. So what's actually fueling that lamp? It's the divine spark. Remember at the very beginning we talked about how the Iron City tricks you into projecting all your power outward? Well, this step is the empowering, deeply radical act of tearing your divine spark right back away from the state, away from bureaucratic logic, away from religious institutions. You rip that spark back from those external ghosts and you house it securely right within your own chest. This right here marks the exact threshold where absolutely everything changes. Before this moment, an individual trapped in the Iron City is merely a desperate witness to an erased history. You're just passively watching your own meaning dissolve, completely helpless against the grinding gears of the machine. But the second you claim the burning lamp, you shed that tragic role forever. You are no longer just a spectator or a passive reader of your own life. You are finally empowered to become the writer. You have transformed. You are now the awakened mercurial spirit. You are no longer some biological machine tethered to the suffocating conformity of the herd. Through the grueling alchemical process of integrating your shadows and wielding the fluid intellect of yellow mercury, you've done it. You have achieved absolute interior sovereignty. You are a self-mastered creator. You are the sole architect of your own reality. As the sole architect, you realize a profoundly liberating truth. The universe is fundamentally silent. And because the external world has absolutely no inherent meaning left to impose upon you, you possess the absolute sovereign authority to forge your own reality. That terrifying epistemological collapse, it didn't destroy you. It simply cleared the board. You are the sole author now, holding the pen hovering right over that pristine ancient vellum. Which brings us to the ultimate realization of this grim, dark fable. The Iron City has crumbled to dust. The Baron's negation has swept the old world completely away. You've survived the psychological descent, you've integrated your darkest shadows, and you've reclaimed your divine spark. You are holding the burning lamp. So I want to leave you with this one thought. Now that the external world is silent, what truth will you write upon the blank vellum of existence?